Hello, my dear students. How are you all? I hope all of you are amazing. I'm Rajni Mamga, your zoology faculty. Welcome you here at the Knowledge Planet powered by Physics Wallah. And we are just going to do the summary of the human reproduction chapter today, right? So let's quickly start it. And I'm sure that all of you are excited and you would like it. So let's see it. And we will be, covering all the things in a very, very sequential way, in a very short way, in a beautiful way, right? So let's see the summary of the full chapter. So when we talk about human reproduction, we know that reproduction means just to give the birth to the young ones, right? So that involves gametogenesis, and gametogenesis basically happen in the reproductive organs. So first of all, we will see the reproductive organs in this chapter, and then we will see in the reproductive organs how the gametogenesis, gamete formation happen. And we know that after gametogenesis, insemination means sperm will injected in the female reproductive tract. So what is the gametogenesis? Gametogenesis means gamete formation. You have heard it right. And you know very well, when we talk about gametogenesis or gamete formation in case of male, this process known as spermatogenesis. Spermato means sperm. Genesis means formation, right? Spermatogenesis. Got it? So it will be spermatogenesis. And in case of female, it is known as oogenesis. That means ovum formation, right? So these are the gametes in male and female. What do you understand by insemination? After the formation of gamete, sperm will injected, or sperm will basically injected inside the female reproductive tract, right? So insemination means semen is released in female reproductive tract. So semen is deposited in female reproductive tract. So we will see the whole step. Reproductive tract. What do you understand by fertilization? So when this sperm fertilized ovum is known as fertilization, right? So we will see the whole step of fertilization, and finally the sperm will, migrate towards the ovum and fertilize it to form the zygote. So that process, this whole process known as fertilization. After fertilization, this embryo at the blastocyst stage. What is blastocyst stage? We will see in the summary. So at the blastocyst stage, it will be implanted, it will be embedded in the uterus wall, right? So blastocyst is the embryonic stage, which will be embedded, or it will be attached with the uterus. So it will embedded into uterus, right? Inner lining of uterus, that we will see. Gestation means it from fertilization to the fully developed fetus, is that particular time process known as gestation period, right? So 9 months. So gestation period means the development of the baby is happening at this particular time. So that is total 9 months for human. And parturition means delivery. So finally, baby get delivered, right? So this is the things that we are just going to see in this whole chapter. So let's see the first male reproductive part. So this is the male reproductive part from NCERT, and this is the diagram which you can draw. So obviously, if we see the male reproductive tract, it is having the primary sex organ known as testes, right? So this is the primary sex organ. Why do we call it primary sex organs? So we know because it obviously involved in the gametogenesis. That means spermatogenesis happen here in the male. Plus it secrete male sex hormone. That is known as androgen. And the common androgen is testosterone, right? So it secrete androgen that you have to remember. And this testes present outside the abdomen. Why? To maintain the 2 to 2.5 degree lower than the normal body temperature for spermatogenesis. So yeah, spermatogenesis require less temperature than the normal body temperature. Hence, testes present outside the body in the scrotum. So scrotum is a highly pigmented skin pouch where exactly testes present, right? And the testes, the lower part of testes, caudal part of testes attached to the scrotum via gubernaculum. So gubernaculum is nothing but fibrous cord, and these fibrous cord attach testes to the scrotum, right? So this is the testes, primary sex organ. Now, obviously, after the sperm formation, it will go to the ducts. So highly coiled duct known as epididymis, which is the longest tube. Then vas deferens enters the abdomen region from the scrotum to the abdomen region, right? It will ascend to the abdomen region, and this is the the duct will finally open into this duct that is known as urethra. So as we can see, this is the urinary bladder. And you know why I have drawn urinary bladder with the male reproductive system? Can you write down? So yes, exactly. I have written this urinary bladder, drawn this urinary bladder along with the male reproductive system because of one reason, that urethra is the common passage for urine as well as the gametes. So hence we call it urinogenital tract also. It is also known as urinogenital tract, right? So also known as urinogenital tract, because this is the common passage for urine as well as gamete that you have to remember, right? So yeah, we can see this is the accessory duct. So sorry, accessory gland. So it is known as seminal vesicle. It is known as seminal vesicle. Then this is the another accessory gland known as prostate gland. And there is another gland that is known as Copper's or bulbourethral gland. As you can see, look like bulb. So bulbourethral gland, right? So these are accessory gland. These are accessory gland. This seminal vesicle and vas deferens has common opening, as you can see this, which is known as ejaculatory duct. And finally, ejaculatory duct open into urethra. So that means this duct is the common passage for the seminal vesicle and the vas deferens, right? So it's a common passage for vas deferens plus seminal vesicle gland. Both of them pour its secretion in the ejaculatory duct, which finally open into urethra. This is the urethral meatus, which take urine and gametes out, right? So it's a urethral meatus. Meatus means opening. This is the external genitalia known as penis. So this is also the part of male reproductive system. So one thing is clear to us, what all things are involved in the male reproductive system? Primary sex organs, that means testes. It also have accessory ducts that will basically take the semen out. That is the epididymis, vas deferens, urethra, all these are accessory ducts, right? Then we have seen three accessory glands. That is seminal vesicle, Copper's gland, and the prostate gland. And external genitalia is involved in the reproductive system, right? So obviously this penis take the sperm out. So now this is how the structure look like. I have already talked about it. So let's start with the testes. So when we talk about testes, it's a primary sex organ. Why? Because it here spermatogenesis and androgen is secreted, right? So it's a paired oval shape as we have seen, present extra abdominally means outside the abdomen to maintain 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower than the body temperature. Why? For spermatogenesis. Neat question. If we see the transverse section of each testes, right? So if we see the transverse section of each testes, it is having 200 to 250 such lobules known as testicular lobule. So each testis has such lobule, which is known as such compartments known as testicular lobules. So how many compartments are there in each testis? 200 to 250. And you know, each testicular lobule have highly coiled tubes known as seminiferous tubule. So yeah, each testicular lobules have 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubule, and inside these seminiferous tubule, two type of cells are there. So if we see the transverse section of seminiferous tubule, how does it look like? So if we see the transverse section of seminiferous tubule, so suppose this is one seminiferous tubule, this is the other seminiferous tubule, right? And this is the space between them. So I'm just doing the section of them. So this is the space around them, right? And they are present inside the testes that we have seen. So, you know, when we talk about them, they are having this special type of cells. So they are having these Sertoli cell inside the cell. So these are seminiferous tubule. ST means seminiferous tubule. They are having this special Sertoli cell. Plus they are having this special, they are having this special spermatogonia also. So spermatogonia are nothing but the gamete mother cell that are going to produce gametes or sperms ahead. Right? So these are the spermatogonia. So these cells inside the testes present in the seminiferous tubule, as we can see. So these two cells are present inside the seminiferous tubule. And this space means interstitial space. Interstitial, you know, it means space. This interstitial space has special cell. So they are having the special cell in this region, which is known as the Leydig cell. Right? So these cells which are present in this space outside the seminiferous tubule, known as Leydig cell, or we also called it interstitial cell because they are present in the space, in the interstitial space between the seminiferous tubule, right? So these two cells present inside the seminiferous tubule, whereas the cell present outside the seminiferous tubule. So these three type of important cells present inside the testes, right? Seminiferous tubule is nothing but the part of testes, as I have shown you in the diagram. So kids, now you just see testes, and I have talked about the seminiferous tubule has one cell, spermatogonia, which is also known as gamete mother cell. So why do we call it gamete mother cell? Because now it's going to, or GMC, gamete mother cell, it's going to produce sperms later, right? So we will see how in this spermatogenesis process. So means spermatogenesis happen in the testes in seminiferous tubule. One thing is clear to us. So they have asked question from here, even from here. So you have to remember this data, right? And plus they are having another cell, second cell, Sertoli cell or nurse or sustentacular cell. So these names are, all names are for the Sertoli cell, right? So as it indicates, the name nurse means it is providing nourishment to the developing sperm inside the seminiferous tubule, right? So what is the purpose of it? It will provide the nourishment to developing sperm. It will secrete inhibin. So inhibin, what is the purpose of inhibin? I'll just tell you. And it will form blood testes barrier. Why it form barrier between the blood and testes? Because we know that in blood, a lot of the infections are present or pathogens are present. So there should be a barrier between testes and blood so that these infection will not enter the testes. And testes is very important organ because spermatogenesis is happening here. So we have to give it extra protection. So Sertoli cell actually making that barrier between testes barrier, right? Testes and blood barrier. So it is also known as tight junction that you must have done in your class 11th epithelial chapter, right? So yeah, it is known as the it is also known as the tight junction that you have to remember. And you know, this cell is stimulated by FSH. So this cell is stimulated by follicle stimulating cell. And you know what? Then this cell also help in the spermiogenesis process, which is the part of spermatogenesis, right? So it also help in the spermiogenesis. That is the part of spermatogenesis we will see ahead. And this cell is stimulated by this hormone of anterior pituitary gland. That is the follicle stimulating hormone. You have to remember, right? So third type of cell, three type of cells present in testes and two in the seminiferous tubule. One outside the seminiferous tubule is Leydig or interstitial cell. So it secrete androgen and stimulate, this cell stimulated by the LH and ICSH hormone. So LH means luteinizing hormone of pituitary gland, right? So luteinizing hormone or FSH. So FSH is stimulating nerve cell, LH is stimulating Leydig cell, right? Or this hormone also known as, in male it is also known as ICSH. So why do we call it ICSH? Because interstitial, it is stimulating interstitial cell. So we also called it interstitial stimulating hormone. Got it? So it is stimulating Leydig cell for what? To secrete androgen. So androgen is nothing but the male sex hormone, especially testosterone, right? So this is all about the testes that you have to remember. We have sum up it in one page. You have got to know this diagram. And now after the primary sex organ, let's see the accessory ducts. So I have talked about the transverse section of the testes. Testes has particular protective layer known as tunica. So wherever you see the term tunica, it means layer, right? So testes is covered by the layer tunica vaginalis, which is the tunica albuginea, right? So vaginalis is outer layer, tunica albuginea is inner layer. Plus they are having one more protective layer, so which you don't have to remember. It doesn't, they don't ask it in exam. So obviously each testes have this lobule that is known as testicular lobule, 200 to 300, 250 to 300, 200 to 250 compartment that we have seen. And each testicular lobule have these highly coiled seminiferous tubules. So this is the structure of testes. But we are just going to do the accessory ducts, right? So accessory ducts will take the sperm outside the testes, outside the body. So we will see these ducts. So accessory ducts have these small tubuli rectus. So first tube where the seminiferous tubule open, these tubes known as tubuli recti. So this is the first tube. Then it will open into these small tubes known as retitestes. So yeah, second tube where they will open is retitestes. This retitestes will open here in these tube known as vas efferentia or efferent ductus, right? So we called it vas efferentia or we called it efferent ductus. So this is the third duct, right? This is the third duct. And you know, you have to remember one thing, that all these three ducts are considered intratesticular because they are present inside the testes. Intratesticular duct which will transfer sperm from seminiferous tubule or from testes to outside the testes, right? So intra means inside the testes. They are present inside testes, as you can see. They are present inside testes, right? So this particular vas efferentia will open into epididymis. So epididymis is the longest tube. So it is having first part head, then it is having body part, then it is having this tail part, as you can see here, right? So first part of the epididymis is the head part, or also known as caput for tail, caput epididymis. Then this will open into the corpus epididymis or body of epididymis, right? So this is the other region of epididymis. And the last part of epididymis is cauda. Cauda means tail part, right? So epididymis having three parts, and I have told you it's a largest. So if we talk about epididymis, it is the longest tube, right? So when we talk about epididymis, it's a longest tube. Epididymis is the longest male reproductive tube. Longest tube or duct, you can say, of male reproductive system, right? And epididymis help in the maturation and temporary storage of sperm. So maturation and temporary storage of sperm happen here. Temporary storage of sperm, right? So this is the function of it. Then this epididymis will finally open out in the vas deferens, right? So finally it will open into the vas deferens. So this is the vas deferens tube that will enter the abdomen via the spermatic cord. So spermatic cord is nothing but the cord in the scrotum, right? Or scrotum cord that is having the space, or this is the passage. This cord is the passage for blood supply, nerve supply, limb supply, and testicular duct supply also, right? So testicular duct will enter, this vas deferens will finally enter, descend ascend there in the vas deferens, ascend in the abdomen region, right? So these are the ducts. And finally vas deferens open where? So this vas deferens after epididymis open into vas deferens, and vas deferens will open in the ejaculatory duct that I have shown you. So ejaculatory duct finally open into urethra, and urethra finally take the sperm out via urethral meatus, right? So it will take sperm out via urethral meatus. So these ducts that is present outside the testes, all these ducts that is present outside the testes known as extratesticular duct, right? So this is the sequence of the duct. Tubuli recti, then it will open into the testes, retitestes open into the vas efferentia, vas efferentia open into the epididymis, and epididymis finally will open where? In the vas deferens and ejaculatory duct, right? So you just tell me the passage of sperm. Passage of sperm, we have seen that first of all, formation of the sperm happen in the seminiferous tubule of testes. Then it will open into tubuli recti or tubulo rectus. Recti means plural, which will open into the retitestes. Retitestes will open where? In the vas efferentia. Vas efferentia will open where? It will open in the epididymis, which is very long, as we have seen. Epididymis will open into vas deferens. Vas deferens finally open into ejaculatory duct, which is the common passage I have told you for the seminal vesicle and the vas deferens. And finally it will open into urethra, and urethra will take the sperm out through the urinary meatus, right? So these are the present inside the testes, so called as intratesticular duct. So these are the accessory duct, second part of male reproductive system. And these are the extratesticular, means present outside the testicle, right? Testicular duct. So these are the accessory duct. After that, we will see the accessory glands. But before I start that, let's discuss the semen. So actually, semen release out from the male reproductive system via the urethral meatus. So semen is having alkaline pH, and 2.5 to 5 ml per ejaculation semen is released. And this much ejaculation have the 200 to 300 million sperm for the normal fertility. This much, this required, right? So you have to remember this value. And semen actually have two composition. One is sperm, other one is the seminal plasma. So sperm contain 5% of semen, where the seminal plasma contain 90 to 95% of the semen, right? And seminal sperm actually produced in the testes, in the seminiferous tubule of testes, we have seen it. Whereas seminal plasma secreted by all the three accessory glands that we have seen in the diagram, and we will see it in detail also. So first accessory gland is seminal vesicle, which is paired and sac-like. You have seen sac-like, coil-like structure. Right? It was coil structure, coil sac-like structure. So you have to remember it. And obviously, this seminal vesicle duct and vas deferens duct open into the common duct known as ejaculatory duct that we have seen. And it secretes 60% seminal plasma. And that's why we called it seminal plasma after the name of seminal vesicle, because majority of this secretion coming from this particular vesicle, right? So this is something which you have to remember. It secretes fructose. It is alkaline, make the semen alkaline. Fibrinogen will clot the semen, which is important for, to transfer the semen, right? So, and prostaglandin will actually act on female reproductive tract. So what it will do, when the semen enter in the female reproductive tract, it will act on the muscle of uterus and just basically do the, antiperistaltic contraction in it. Means the contraction in the uterus that will push the semen, push the sperm to go in the fallopian tube for fertilization. So it will just make the upward movement, right? So you can say prostaglandin actually act on uterus, cause upward movement in uterus in female, right? So this is the purpose of prostaglandin. Next, and what is the purpose of fructose? It will provide nourishment to the sperm, right? So it will provide nourishment, food. It will feed sperm, right? You have to remember it. Calcium, prostaglandin secrete calcium, which is required for the high motility of the sperm in the female reproductive tract. It gives milky appearance to the semen, right? So you have to remember it. Copper's gland, and it is unpaired. NEET question. So it is unpaired accessory gland, and it basically look like chestnut shaped. So you have seen in the diagram. Although if we see the diagram, it look like two. It look like paired, but it is single. As urethra is basically passing, is basically on present on the anterior side of it, in the front side of it, and that's why it seem, because it's passing through it, that's why it seem two, but it is exactly one, right? So it's unpaired, chestnut shaped, as we have seen, present, below the urethra, right? That is the location. So prostate gland is basically chestnut shaped and unpaired. So when we talk about corpus and bulbourethral gland, so it's like this structure present on either side of urethra that we have seen, small P-shaped, and they are paired. So they are also paired. Only one, this one is unpaired, right? It is paired P-shaped. NEET question, you have to remember it. I'm just marking important also. So what is the purpose of the bulbourethral gland secretion? It is viscous, it is secreting viscous mucus for lubrication, right? So that is the purpose of the corpus or bulbourethral gland that you have to remember. So now let me take you ahead towards the female reproductive system. So let's discuss about the female reproductive system, right? So when we talk about female reproductive system, it also have the primary sex organ. So what are the primary sex organs in case of female reproductive system? So obviously primary sex organs here are ovaries. So you can see the ovaries, paired ovaries, right? So these are the ovaries. Next, if you see this particular, fallopian tube and uterus, cervix and all, these are the accessory ducts. So obviously fallopian tube, or we also called it oviduct. So it is having three part: infundibulum, first part, ampulla, isthmus, this second, and this is the third part. Isthmus finally open into uterus, right, where implantation happen. Uterus finally open in this cervix, narrow passage of the uterus known as cervical canal, which will open finally in the vaginal canal. So vagina is also accessory duct. It's also the part of female reproductive system. Plus female reproductive system have external genitalia. So what is present in external genitalia? That means the organ, the reproductive organ that present outside, and plus mammary gland also part of it, right? So mammary gland also part of it, that you have to remember. So let's see all the organ one by one. So this is about the ovaries, primary sex organ. Why we call them primary sex organ? Because they secrete sex hormone, estrogen and progesterone. Second, they produce gamete also. Oogenesis happen in the ovaries, right? So that's why we call them primary sex organ. They are very flat and almond shape, as we can see right in the diagram. So next is fallopian tube. So when we talk about fallopian tube, it is having three parts: infundibulum, they are having ampulla, they are having isthmus, right? So if you have seen infundibulum, they are having this, end of the, or this particular end of the infundibulum have the fimbriae. So fimbriae are nothing but the finger-like projection, right? So fimbriae are nothing, little finger-like projection. So why they are present there? Finger-like projection. So they are present to catch the egg. So they will catch the egg that is released by the ovary. So you can see the diagram. So the ovary secreting the egg here during ovulation, and it will catch it. So here they are having this particular pore known as the ostium. So ostium is nothing but the opening, right? It's a kind of entrance, kind of door. So the fimbriae, finger-like projection that are catching the egg, which is released by the ovary, will be catched by the fimbriae, and via this ostium, it will enter the cavity of fallopian tube, right? And it will reaches the second part, ampulla. Ampulla known as site of fertilization. Here exactly fertilization happen, right? Site of fertilization, here sperm enter and fertilize the egg, you have to remember, right? So infundibulum is nothing but the funnel shaped tube, as we have seen, right? In the diagram, it's a funnel shaped tube. So when we talk about stimulus, is the last part, right? It's a posterior part, last part of oviduct or fallopian tube, as we have seen in the diagram, right? It's a narrow last part. Next, uterus, womb, or hystera. So all these names are same for uterus. This is actual site for implantation. So here embryo is implanted, right? And growth, development of baby happen in the uterus, in the womb. So it is having three part. So first part is fundus. Fundus is this dome shaped part. This main part is the body, corpus. And then obviously cervical region is there, right? Cervix is there. So fundus is nothing but the dome shaped part. It's a dome shaped structure, right? And corpus is nothing known as body part. And then, I mean, this corpus part is the main site for implantation, right? I mean, common site for implantation. And cervix region is basically the narrow part that you can see, narrow part of uterus, right? And this cervical canal and vaginal canal together known as cervical canal and canal of vagina, together known as birth canal, because baby delivered out from this passage, right? So we called it birth canal. Why? Because delivery happened, or basically baby passed through this particular canal only. So that's why together known as birth canal. NEET question. So you have to remember this. What is birth canal? Next, if we see the wall of uterus, it is made up of three wall, as you can see here. Outer is perimetrium, which is made up of fibrous layer, and it's a protective. It acts as a protective layer, right? Second, myometrium, made up of smooth muscle. So it is having the smooth muscle. So you will ask me, ma'am, why smooth muscle is there? So obviously myometrium, myo means muscle, metrium means layer. And middle layer is smooth muscle, and smooth muscle has oxytocin receptor, right? So it is having oxytocin receptor. And why they are having oxytocin receptor? So that during parturition, during baby delivery, parturition hormone oxytocin will come and bind here on the oxytocin receptor, right? So oxytocin receptor, when it bind with the oxytocin, will bind with the oxytocin receptor, what will happen? It will cause contraction in the muscle, cause delivery, right? So this is important for contraction during delivery. So oxytocin will bind on oxytocin receptor, and it will cause contraction of uterine muscle, contraction of uterus for delivery, right? So that is required during delivery. You must have remember. Now, the innermost layer is endometrium. So when we talk about innermost layer, it undergoes cyclical change. Cyclical change means it keep on shedding off if there is no pregnancy during menstrual cycle, that we will see, and it will keep on regenerating every month, right? So when the pregnancy happen, it will remain as it is. It will not shed off till the 9 months, till the baby delivery, right? So this is the endometrium, which undergoes cyclical changes. It's a glandular part because it will secrete nourishment also for the embryo, right? So we will see it ahead. So this is about the endometrium. Next part of the female reproductive system after uterus is vagina, fibromuscular tube, and it doesn't have any glands, very important for NEET. So vagina don't have even a single gland, right? And it is also known as copulatory canal because semen released from here, semen injected in the female from here, right? So it is also known as copulatory organ or copulatory canal. Along with cervical canal, it is known as the vaginal, right? It is known as the birth canal. So next is the external genitalia, the organ that look from outside. I mean the part that appear from outside, right? So how the female reproductive system look from outside, that is the external genitalia. We will see it, and then we will see the mammary glands. So all the 6 things are forming the female reproductive tract, right? So this is how the external genitalia look like. So easy diagram, mons pubis or veneris is the cushion part, right? So if you see from outside, cushiony part covered with the pubic hair. So that is the mons pubis. Then this, this fold of the skin known as the labia majora, outer fleshy fold of skin. And when we just, remove the outer fleshy fold, inner fleshy folds are also there, known as the labia minora, right? Which is covering the urethral opening and vaginal opening. So in female, for urine, there is different passage, and for vagina, for the gametes, for the birth, there are different passage known as vaginal opening, right? And this vaginal opening covered by partial membrane. It is covered by partially by membrane known as hymen, which gets ruptured usually during first coitus, but sometimes it doesn't rupture even during the first coitus, right? Or it can be ruptured due to sport, due to sudden fall, due to insertion of vaginal tampons used during the menstrual cycle. So these can also be the reason for the breakdown of hymen. So it is not the, we cannot say that it is the virginity knot, right? We cannot consider it virginity knot. So you have to remember this. Next, clitoris. So clitoris is little tiny finger-like projection, not little, you can say tiny finger-like projection. And it is very sensitive, right? It is having erectile tissue. It's very sensitive. And, it is covered by the prepuce. Prepuce is the skin fold. So it's a loose skin fold cover, right? That is covering it. And this is the urethral opening for the urine. This is the vaginal opening, for vaginal opening means vagina opening, and which is partially covered by hymen. So hymen also part of external genitalia as per our NCERT. You have to remember it, right? So then the space covered by the labia minora is the vestibule, having the urethral opening, vaginal opening, plus some vestibular glands are there. So this gland which is present near the urethra known as paraurethral or Skene's gland, and other one is the Bartholin gland. So both of them secreting the lubricating fluid, mucus and alkaline solution, right? So that they can neutralize the acidity of the semen and all. So that is the purpose of these particular glands present in the external genitalia, but vagina don't have any gland, right? So vagina is not the part of external genitalia. That is the fibromuscular tube that I have shown you behind, right? That I've shown you before this particular, particular thing, right? So now another topic is mammary gland. So when we talk about mammary gland, it is present in human female, right? So when we talk about the this mammary gland, it's a modified sweat gland. You have to remember, important. It's, yes, you have heard it right. It's a modified sweat gland, and in male it is vestigial, means they are not functional in case of male, but in female they are used to help help feeding the young ones, right? So we know we all have feed on mother breast after birth. So just after birth, we require mother milk. So we just suck the mother milk from the breast. So that is the purpose of the mammary gland in the male. In the female, so obviously mammary gland development generally done by the estrogen and progesterone during puberty, right? So we know very well that during puberty this will start maturing, right? Will start developing. So it is having this structure. This is the structure of the mammary gland. It is attached to the pectoralis muscle. So there is a muscle, back muscle, on which it is basically attached. So obviously this gland, this mammary gland glands attach on pectoralis majoris muscle, right? So attached on pectoralis majoris muscle, major muscle, you have to remember. And then when we talk about mammary gland, they are made up of the fibrous tissue. So fibrous tissue will provide support to the duct, right? It will provide support to all the ducts that is present in female reproductive in the mammary gland. Plus it is having other tissue, that is the adipose tissue. So adipose tissue means fatty tissue deposited on the mammary gland, which will basically help in determining the size, or all the female have different, variable, the size of the breast are variable, right? Or mammary gland are variable because of the adipose tissue present in it, right? So yeah, you can say this is the fat deposited and variable fat deposited in different female, right? So next is the glandular tissue. So we are just going to see the glandular tissue. What is the purpose? So these are the main tissues here. So we will see the glandular tissue, right? So let's start with the glandular tissue. So this is the mammary lobe. So when we talk about mammary lobes, so these are the mammary lobes having many alveoli in it. So mammary lobes are each, mammary gland have 15 to 20 mammary lobes in it. You have to remember this number. And then this mammary lobe contain many sac-like, small sac-like structure, alveoli. You can see these alveoli, right? So alveoli secrete milk. Here milk secretion happen. Secrete milk, and which hormone will basically act on these particular mammary alveoli. So prolactin from the anterior pituitary gland. Prolactin stimulate mammary alveoli to secrete milk, and then this milk will release in the mammary duct, right? So obviously when we talk about these alveoli, so they will open into the mammary duct. So this is the mammary duct. So they will open into mammary duct. So many mammary duct finally open into the a swell-like or dilated structure known as ampulla. So you can see ampulla, many mammary duct opening in the ampulla, right? And finally, many ampulla will open into the lactiferous duct. And finally, all lactiferous duct will open out via nipple, right? So this milk will release out via nipple outside. Areola is the darkly pigmented area around the nipple, right? So it's nothing but the deeply pigmented area, darkly pigmented, right? Deeply pigmented area around the pigmented area around breast or around nipple. That's all, right? You have to remember this. That's all. So this is about the mammary gland. That's all you have to remember about it. Now let's discuss about the gametogenesis, right? So we are done with the male and female reproductive system. Now see that how gametogenesis formation happen in both. So first of all, this diagram is for spermatogenesis. So spermatogenesis will start during puberty or at the puberty, right? So this process will start at puberty. You know what is puberty? At puberty. And this spermatogonia, also known as gamete mother cell, you know what is gamete mother cell. And this spermatogonia is diploid. In our case, it is having 46 chromosome, right? So chromosome look like this. So such 46 structure present in spermatogonia. means they are diploid, right? So what happens? Spermatogonia undergo mitosis to increase their number, right? So they will undergo this, division phase. So division why? Just to increase their number for spermatogenesis, and it will start at puberty. You have to remember. Then it will just increase its size to form the primary spermatocyte. And primary spermatocyte is also diploid, right? Means they are having 46 such structure in them. Then it will undergo first meiosis, meiosis 1. And we know that during meiosis, what happened? It will undergo meiosis and it will form the one cell, one primary spermatocyte form, two secondary spermatocyte. And secondary spermatocyte will become, so primary spermatocyte is diploid, it become haploid. How? Such 46 structure get unpaired in it, right? So 23 such structure will go in one cell, 23 such structure will go in one secondary spermatocyte, and 23 such structure will go in other cell. So 23 in one cell and 23 chromosome in other cell, they become unpaired. 23 pairs means 46, right? So such 23 pairs. In pairs, earlier they were in the pair, but now they become unpaired. That you must have done the concept in your class 11th, right? So 23 such structure will go there, 23 will go there. And finally, this secondary spermatocyte will undergo meiosis 2. So they will undergo meiosis 2. We know meiosis has two steps, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So during meiosis 1, these chromosomes get separated, and during meiosis 2, chromatids get separated. So one chromosome have these two arms. Now they will get separated. So 23 structure will go in one cell and 23 such structure will go in one cell after meiosis 2. So spermatid has 23 spermatid in it, 23 chromatid in it, 23 chromatid in it. And other secondary cell also undergo division to form two cells, each having 23 chromatids. So now they will get differentiated this way, right? So spermatid has this 23 chromatids in them. Now spermatid will differentiate, will undergo many changes, because spermatid is the spherical, it's round in shape, and it's non-motile, it doesn't have head and tail, so it will differentiate. And this differentiation process known as spermiogenesis. So this process known as spermiogenesis, so it will just, differentiate, or spermiogenesis means formation of spermatozoa from spermatid. And spermatozoa is motile. You can see it's motile and it's polar. Polar means having head and tail, as you can see in the diagram. So I hope you are liking this and you are getting all the things nicely. That's all. This is how the spermatogenesis look like. So that means one primary spermatocyte. So one primary spermatogenesis. So this whole step from spermatogonia to the formation of spermatozoa, and each spermatozoa will be haploid, means having 23 chromatids in them, right? And this whole process known as spermatogenesis. So this whole process, the spermatogenesis. And you have to remember what is spermiogenesis. Differentiation is spermiogenesis, right? So that's all. This is about the gametogenesis, spermatogenesis. Now I have told you that one primary spermatocyte are forming how many sperms? So one forming the 4 spermatozoa or sperms, right? 4 haploid sperms, and it is diploid. So one primary spermatocyte is actually forming the 4 spermatozoa, one forming 4, and one secondary spermatocyte forming 2 sperm. And 2 secondary spermatocyte will form 4 sperms. So they can ask you these counting in application based question in NEET. So you have to be very careful whatever I have told you, right? So one secondary spermatocyte will form the 2 sperms, right? So if they will ask you that how many sperms will be produced from one primary spermatocyte, you have to remember 4 sperms. How many sperms will be produced from one secondary spermatocyte? It will be 2, right? So let's see the structure of the spermatozoa. This is how the spermatozoa look like. So obviously it is having very thin plasma membrane, which is enclosing the whole sperm. Acrosome is this structure, cap-like structure, which is filled with the acrosome, right? So acrosome, it's a cap-like structure. It's a cap-like structure. So it is, all these sperms have one head. They are having the neck region. They are having the middle piece, as you can see, and they are having the tail. So these four parts present in the sperm, and the head is covered with the acrosome cap-like structure, which is the modified Golgi apparatus. So it's a neat question, modified Golgi, right? It's a modified Golgi apparatus, and it is filled with the sperm lysin enzyme. The acrosome is filled with sperm lysin enzyme. So what is the purpose of sperm lysin enzyme? NEET question. So they have asked question in NEET from this particular part. So sperm lysin will dissolve egg membrane during fertilization. Egg membrane or egg envelope, right? During fertilization. You have to remember it. During fertilization. That's all. Right? Next, when we talk about neck region, it is having the centriole. So it contain two centriole. Contain two centrioles. So one is the proximal centriole. One is the proximal centriole, which help in the cleavage of egg. So egg don't have their own centriole. It is donated by the sperm during cleavage, during the division, during the zygote formation, right? That you will see. So it proximal will help in the cleavage. So helps in cleavage after fertilization. It will help in the division of the embryo. We will see. And then other centriole is the distal centriole. So what is the purpose of distal centriole? It will just form this, you can see this. It will form this particular region, right? So this centriole will basically, this distal centriole will form the axial filament. That is known as axial filament. So that axial filament passing through middle piece and tail, right? Axial filament of tail. And I'm sure you have done it in class 11 cell chapter. What is axial filament? And they are made up of microtubule with arrangement 9+2. So they are having this microtubule arrangement, right? So it's your 11th class part. So microtubule arrangement in the axial filament is this. You have to remember it, right? So next, if you see the middle piece have spirally arranged mitochondria, and this spirally arranged mitochondria also known as nibuncon, right? So such arrangement of mitochondria known as nibuncon. Don't be confused if you see this term somewhere. And they will provide energy for movement of the sperm in the female reproductive tract. And tail, or which is also like filament, help in motility, right? So it will help in the movement of sperm. That's all. We are done with the structure of the sperm that they can ask you in the exam, right? So I have told you what kind of question they have already asked. So let me take you ahead. So this is what we have already done. This is the transverse section of seminiferous tubule in the testes, spermatogonia, Sertoli cell. And you know what? Once the sperms has formed, once sperm formation has been done, so this spermatid or immature sperms are attached with the Sertoli cell. So now after maturation, they will just leave the Sertoli cell and just go out of the seminiferous tubule, right? And that process known as permeation. So what is permeation? Finally, when the sperm is basically developed, so it will just leave the Sertoli cell. It will just detach from the Sertoli cell and leave the seminiferous tubule and go out to the accessory duct that we have seen, right? So spermation means release of sperm either in the cavity of the seminiferous tubule or out of it, right? So it will go out of it. Release of sperms after development, right? So it will not embedded, now it is not embedded with the Sertoli cell. So release of sperm into seminiferous tubule cavity. or outside it, right? So it will go further, it will be transferred to the further accessory tubes that we know. So now let's discuss about the oogenesis, which is a little bit peculiar, which is a little bit different in comparison to the male reproductive system. How? Let's see. So, when we talk about the oogenesis, you just see the diagram. Oogenesis will start at the embryonic stage, unlike spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis will start at fetal stage, we know, but it will start during embryonic stage. Got it, guys? So oogonia is the gamete mother cell. Again, it is having 46 chromosome, and it is happening, this process happening in the fetal stage when the fetus is in the mother womb, right? So oogonia, having 46 chromosome, will undergo division process, mitosis, increase its number to form primary oocyte, and primary oocyte are diploid. They are having 46 chromosome. So this primary oocyte during fetal stage will start the meiosis 1 but get arrested at prophase 1 stage. NEET question, right? So it will arrest at the prophase 1 stage, and it will remain arrested till this female fetus reaches the puberty. So it will be born, the female fetus will be born, and that female will grow up to puberty. Then this will complete its meiosis 1. It's really complex process in female, guys, right? So childhood before puberty. So now the baby is born, and she's living her childhood. Before puberty is the childhood. So no new oogonia formed after birth. They remain fixed. Not even a single oogonia will be added. They are fixed. And majority of these primary oocyte undergo atresia, degeneration. So many of them get degenerated because they don't have huge amount of FSH to maintain it, follicle stimulating hormone. You must have done in class 11th, right? So don't ask, mom, what is FSH? We have done it in class 11th. And this is the summary class, right? So in detail, while we are doing very, very detailed session, in the class, so we are just doing all the things nicely, right? So 60 to 80,000 follicle only left in each ovary by the time this female reach at puberty. So these points are important for NEET. These points are important for NEET exam. They have asked these questions earlier also. Now these primary oocyte, once the female reach at puberty, meiosis 1 is completed, and meiosis 1 is unequal division here. You'll ask, ma'am, how unequal? You know why? What is happening here? This primary oocyte undergoing meiosis 1, and they are forming two different size cell. Means one cell is insignificantly small, having no nutrition at all, and other one getting all the nourishment. It's like favoritism, that the primary oocyte divided into two. One is not getting any food, another is getting everything. So this is the really partiality. It is unequal thing happening, right? So this insignificant size cell known as polar body, which will dies off after some time, because this poor cell don't have the food to eat, right? And whereas secondary oocyte is basically big in size. And why this unequal division happen? Why one cell getting all the cytoplasm, other not getting even small? So just because when embryo formation will start after fertilization, no. So before it get implanted, it takes 7-8 days after fertilization to get implanted. So before it get implanted in the uterus, they actually have to arrange food by themselves. So from where they will get the nourishment? Obviously, that's why it's storing it. So this is the necessity of the body. It's not partiality, right? So don't feel sad for the polar body, right? So that is for the benefit of the human, right? Benefit of the process. So nature has made it so so miraculous. So meiosis 2. So this secondary oocyte will start doing meiosis 2, but again it get arrested at metaphase 2. So you will be like, ma'am, why they are continuously doing this thing? Because that is the complex process, that is the complexity of this process in the female, right? So it will complete only after sperm entry, only after sperm entry in the secondary oocyte. It will complete its meiosis 2. If sperm will not enter, if fertilization will not happen, that means no fertilization. That means no meiosis, no completion of meiosis 2, right? So what will happen if there is no fertilization? We will discuss it, right? So if sperm enter the secondary oocyte, only then meiosis 2 will be done, completed, and that will be unequal. So second polar body of insignificant size will form, which will dies off after some time, and other cell will form ovum, right? So ovum will be produced. So obviously ovum will be produced, and this is the cell which will form the zygote. We will see how. So you have to remember, this is very important for NEET exam. This is very important for NEET exam, right? And obviously when we talk about the one primary oocyte will produce how many ovum? So one primary oocyte, which is again diploid, right? So it is diploid, but after meiosis 1 it formed the first polar body plus secondary oocyte, and secondary oocyte also undergo unequal division from one ovum. So one primary oocyte will form one haploid ovum. So that is the difference between spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Remember this. In spermatogenesis, one primary spermatocyte form four sperms, four functional sperm, but here only one ovum is formed from the one primary oocyte, right? So female has very fixed number of the egg, and this process will keep on happening. Each and every follicle will or cell will develop from menarche. Menarche means first menstrual cycle, first time when female undergoing this changes, right, to menopause. So menopause means when the menstrual cycle is over. So at that time, the maturation of the follicle or egg will also stop. So means female has very fixed number of the egg and very fixed number of reproductive life in very fixed number of reproductive life, but it is not in the case of male. Male produce sperm throughout the life. So next, let's discuss about the folliculogenesis, means follicle formation. So we know that inside the follicle, this egg is present, right? So let's discuss about it. So this is the ovary. So ovary, outer layer of ovary known as germinal epithelium, which is made up of single cuboidal epithelium that you must have done in your class 11th. And inside the germinal epithelium, they are having the another layer, tunica albuginea. So they are having the another layer, tunica albuginea. I'm just talking about that, this oogenesis happen inside the, or this, oogenesis process we have seen. Now I'm just talking about the follicle formation in the ovary, right? Inside which egg is present. So this is tunica albuginea, second lining. And then ovary has two parts, outer cortex region, and this inner part, medulla. So yeah, this whole space of the inside the ovary known as stroma. So this stroma has outer cortex. Stroma means this part. You just imagine this whole part means this whole part, you can say. So this whole part, stroma. And now we are just talking about stroma has outer cortex and inner medulla. And you know what? Medulla has blood supply, lymph supply. It is having blood supply, lymph supply, right? And nerve supply, whatever. Whereas this cortex region, here the follicle development happen. Primary follicle mature into secondary follicle, secondary mature into tertiary follicle, as you can see here, right? So primary follicle mature into secondary follicle, secondary mature into tertiary follicle, tertiary follicle mature into the Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle, basically in the presence of LH, it will rupture to release the secondary oocyte out. So we will just talk about it, right? So when we talk about these follicular structure, inside these follicle, our egg is produced. That means this, primary oocyte, secondary oocyte, etc., etc., right? So let's see in the primary follicle what happened. So when we talk about the primary follicle, so primary follicle means, see, suppose this is primary oocyte, and this primary oocyte is covered with the special cell known as granulosa cell in the ovary. So this is the special cell, granulosa cell. Granulosa cell, and this is basically primary oocyte. Right? So primary oocyte is diploid, you know very well. And this is known as primary follicle. This structure known as primary follicle, as you can see. Right now, this primary follicle will mature into secondary follicle. So this is not 2 degree, it's secondary follicle, right? So don't consider it 2 degree or 1 degree. No, no, it's secondary follicle. So secondary follicle has this primary oocyte, and they will mature, this follicle will mature in each ovary every month alternatively. So one follicle will mature in one ovary in 1 month, and in other month other ovary will mature one follicle, right? And it will keep on happening in alternative way. So in 1 month one ovary will release this egg, and in other month another ovary will release it. So in whole year 6 month, in whole year 6 ovary released by one ovary, and 6 ova released by one ovary, and 6 oocyte released by the one ovary. So you have to remember it. Let's see the structure, right? So yes, primary oocyte in this will be surrounded by the granulosa cell, but now granulosa cell number will increase, right? Their number will increase, size will increase, and they will develop a special theca layer around it. So they are having this theca layer. So you have to remember these things that I'm writing, right? How the follicle, and this follicle is actually forming in the cortex region of stroma, NEET question, right? So yeah, theca layer, and this is the granulosa layer, granulosa cells layer. These are special cell, and this is the primary oocyte. So theca means this protective covering, right? It's a kind of wall. Theca means kind of wall. So now this secondary follicle will mature in the tertiary follicle, and all this happening in the ovary, right? So it will mature into tertiary follicle. So tertiary follicle means in the tertiary follicle, it will complete its meiosis 1. And it will form primary, the second polar body, first polar body, which will be degenerated, and obviously secondary, obviously it's secondary oocyte, right? So this is the secondary oocyte, obviously covered by the granulosa cell, covered by granulosa cell. This is granulosa cell. And theca layer will differentiate into 2 layers, theca externa and theca interna, right? So theca layer differentiated into 2 layers, theca externa and theca interna. So let's see. This way. So this is the secondary oocyte. So that means they will ask you question in the NEET that in which follicle this meiosis 2 will be completed. So obviously you have to remember it, that it will complete in the tertiary follicle, right? It will complete in tertiary follicle. So this is the tertiary follicle where egg complete its meiosis 1 to form secondary oocyte. And this space known as antrum. Antrum means fluid filled cavity. It is filled with the fluid, and that fluid secreted by the granulosa cell itself. So fluid filled cavity, you will ask, ma'am, why fluid filled cavity? To provide nourishment to the secondary oocyte, right? So this is the fluid filled cavity antrum. So it's a characteristic feature of follicle. So antrum is the characteristic feature, means for the first time it was formed here in the tertiary follicle, and that's why it is considered characteristic feature of tertiary follicle, right? And obviously it's a granulosa cell, granulosa cells layer. This is the theca interna. So theca interna will start secreting hormone, and that hormone will convert into estrogen later. So you can just say it's secrete precursor of estrogen, right? So what you don't have to remember its name. So you just have to remember that it will secrete a particular, what we called hormone that will be converted into estrogen later, right? So that means ultimately these tertiary follicle are secreting, or these follicle as they mature, they are secreting huge amount of estrogen. This is very important for NEET. So this is very important for NEET, that which will secrete estrogen. Obviously follicle will secrete estrogen, right? Now this tertiary follicle will mature to form the Graafian follicle. So this is the secondary oocyte which were starting meiosis 2 but get arrested at metaphase 2 stage of meiosis 2, I have told you, right? And this egg will actually produce, this egg will produce a special layer around it, NEET question. So this will produce a special layer around it known as zona pellucida. So it's a zona pellucida. And this zona pellucida doesn't made up of any cell. It's a acellular layer. Acellular means doesn't made up of any cell. NEET question. NEET question. Acellular layer. So you will ask me, mom, if it pellucida. Mom, if it is not made up of any cell layer, then what is the composition of zona pellucida? It's made up of glycoprotein layer. It's made up of glycoprotein layer, and this is very important for the Graafian follicle, right? So in the Graafian follicle stage, this is secreted. And obviously it is surrounded by the granulosa cell the same way, having the antrum also, which was formed in the tertiary follicle stage. And plus they are having the theca externa, theca interna, everything, right? So they are having this theca interna, theca externa also. And this is the Graafian follicle. This is Graafian follicle. This is how the Graafian follicle or mature follicle look like, which is ready to release the secondary oocyte. And this secondary oocyte is actually arrested at metaphase 2 stage, right? So this secondary oocyte is ready to come out of ovary, ready to come out of the ovary, go to the fallopian tube, and if fertilization happen, pregnancy will be happening, right? So we'll see everything. So, you know, this is the antrum. This is the granulosa cell layer, theca interna, theca externa. I'm writing it in short way. So secondary oocyte has secreted a special layer zona pellucida around it. I'm writing it ZP. You have to remember it, right? So this is how exactly Graafian follicle look like. And you know, now Graafian follicle in presence of LH, in presence of LH surge, in presence of LH surge, this Graafian follicle will rupture to release secondary oocyte, and this is known as ovulation. So what is the ovulation? Ovulation means release of secondary oocyte from mature Graafian follicle. From Graafian follicle, or it's a mature follicle known as ovulation. And after ovulation, once the egg is released out of ovary, we know it will be catched by fimbriae of fallopian tube and will go to ampulla for fertilization, right? And now the left out Graafian follicle convert into corpus luteum. Luteum term has come from lutein. So I'm sure you have heard the lutein term somewhere else, that is in the eye, right? So I have macula lutea, which is the yellow spot. So lutea term is for yellow pigment. Lutein means a yellow pigment, right? So corpus luteum has that lutein which make it yellow in color. So we called it yellow body. Now the left out Graafian follicle after releasing secondary oocyte out, left out Graafian follicle convert into corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum is for temporary time. If there is no fertilization, it will degenerate after, you know, after 14 days, after 12-13 days of in absence of pregnancy, right? So you know, this corpus luteum is actually temporary endocrine structure. NEET question. So temporary endocrine structure, NEET question. And you know, in NEET, if you will solve the question, you will find that they have actually asked you that it secrete estrogen, little amount of estrogen, not huge, little amount of estrogen, even little amount of relaxin, little amount of inhibin. All these hormones secreted in little amount, but in huge amount of progesterone. So in NEET, they will ask you that huge amount of progesterone secreted by which structure, which temporary endocrine gland? Corpus luteum. And in absence of pregnancy, this corpus luteum degenerate into the corpus albicans white body. So in absence of pregnancy, when there is no pregnancy, in absence of pregnancy, what happened? Corpus luteum degenerated. And all this thing happening in the stroma cortex region. So stroma in the cortex region, folliculogenesis, luteal corpus luteum formation happen, right? Folliculogenesis and all, right? So what is the purpose of inhibin? What is the purpose of relaxin during the pregnancy? It will relax the cervix region for parturition, right? Inhibin will inhibit the FSH, excess FSH. So inhibin, wherever you see the inhibin, it has only one purpose. That means it will inhibit or it will inhibit excess secretion of FSH, excess FSH secretion, right? That's all. That's all about this. Now let me take you ahead. So we have already discussed this, and this is how the secondary oocyte look like, which has released out from the ovary. This is how secondary oocyte look like. So, you know, some left out granulosa cell known as corona radiata. Corona radiata are the intact granulosa cell around the egg after ovulation. Some granulosa cell remain around it, known as the corona radiata. This is the zona pellucida layer. You know what is zona pellucida layer? This space between the egg membrane and zona pellucida layer known as perivitelline space, as you can see. And this is the ovum. And this is the membrane of not ovum, not exactly ovum. It's the secondary oocyte. We call it secondary oocyte before fertilization, right? Or before sperm enter inside it. We don't call it ovum. But in our NCRT, they have just used the ovum term. But in NEET, they have asked this question that while egg is released, while egg is ovulated, during ovulation, which stage of the egg is released? So it's secondary oocyte. Don't be confused, right? So you have to remember, once the sperm touches it, then we called it ovum. So obviously sperm is touching it. That's why they have given the term ovum. And their plasma membrane is known as oolemma. And their cytoplasm known as ooplasm. Oo means egg, plasm means cytoplasm of egg. Plus they are having these small cortical granules also inside them. We will see what is their function. They will help in the prevent in the polyspermy, means many sperm. They will prevent many sperm to enter in the egg. How? We will see. So they are known as cortical granules, which is filled with this special enzyme granules, right? So this is how the secondary oocyte look like, right? So this is the structure present around it. You have to remember. And now after that, we will be seeing the menstrual cycle. So, you know, menstrual cycle is actually repeat every month in primate female. So this is the characteristic of the primate female reproductive. It's happening in the primate female reproductive system. And, you know, it is the average cycle for 28 to it's repeating after every 28 to 29 days. And you know, when we talk about the this structure, this, you know, menstrual cycle, so you know, pituitary hormone will control the ovarian event. That means FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone will control the ovary. Ovarian event, ovarian hormone estrogen secreted by the follicle, I have told you. And corpus luteum secrete progesterone, already told you, right? And little amount of estrogen, I have told you. And these hormones will act on the uterus. So that means all the hormones, all the things are happening in a sequential, beautiful way. So pituitary hormone will act on ovaries and basically help in the ovarian event. All these are occurring in ovary that we have seen. And ovarian structure secrete estrogen progesterone hormone that will act on uterus wall to just, you know, change in the uterus, controlling uterine event. So means this during menstrual cycle, two organs are affected. One is uterus, other one is the ovary, right? So these two organs are affected. These two organs are undergoing changes. So let's see it now. Let's see it. During menstrual cycle, total 4 phases are there. So what are those 4 phases? These are 4 phases. So in those 28 days, it means after every 28 to 29 days, menstrual cycle repeat itself, right? So menstrual phase start from day 1 to 5. So means out of 20 to 29 days, 1 to 5 days will basically 3 to 5 days, right? So 3 to 5 days are basically for menstrual phase, in which shedding of endometrium layer of uterus, inner lining of uterus happen in absence of pregnancy. I have told you. But and you know, when there is the absence of menstrual cycle, when there is no menstrual cycle, means pregnancy has occurred, or sometime due to stress, sometime due to some anxiety, absence of menstrual cycle are there, right? Or because of some condition, right? So why the shedding of the endometrium along with the unfertilized degenerated egg, means the egg which has come from the ovary, has gone to fallopian tube but has not fertilized. So they will degenerate. It will degenerate and will come out along with this endometrium lining, right? And what is the root cause of the menstrual phase? Decrease in progesterone. Although all the hormones are very less at this time, but menstruation bleeding happen due to low progesterone, because I have told you progesterone help or maintain the thickness of endometrium lining, right? It maintain the pregnancy. P for progesterone, P for pregnancy, maintain the thickness of endometrium throughout the pregnancy. So when this hormone drop down, means there is no this endometrium lining will be shedded off. Now after 3 to 5 days this happen. Now 6 to 13 days of menstrual cycle, again proliferative phase, means uterus lining again undergo division, in hope that in the now the egg will come out, and in the next time I will just, this egg will fertilize, and I will provide space for the embryo to attach. So it is having hope that now this month, pregnancy will happen, right? So it again preparing itself, getting ready for next pregnancy. And follicular phase happening in ovary, means in ovary again other follicle is basically getting mature, right? So day 6 to 13 means approximately 1 week, this phase for 1 week, and a follicle stimulating hormone will act on ovary and help in the follicular formation. And follicle secrete estrogen, I have already told you. This estrogen will act on the uterus and divide the broken wall, divide the shedding of wall, right? So which has shedded off in the menstrual phase will again regenerate itself. So this is the purpose of estrogen. NEET question, right? Now after this phase, when estrogen level go up on the 13th day, only on the 13th day, not on other day, only on 13th day, it sent positive feedback for LH secretion. And due to LH surge, LH will be at so much peak. Due to LH surge, Graafian follicle rupture to release the egg, right? So due to LH surge, NEET question, due to LH surge, this Graafian follicle, it will act on Graafian follicle, it will rupture and release secondary oocyte known as ovulation, occur on 14th day of menstrual cycle, right? Occurs on 14th day of menstrual cycle. And once egg is released, then after that, in the uterus, luteal, in the ovary, left out Graafian follicle will convert into corpus luteum, and that's why it is known as luteal phase. As in ovary, luteum is formed, and at the same time, this uterus secreting nourishment. Why? Because in hope the egg that has been released, during ovulation, egg has been released, it will go to ampulla region, sperm will come and fertilize it, it will come to me and I'll provide nourishment. It will come to uterus for implantation, I'll provide huge nourishment to it. So it starts secreting nourishment, and that's why we called it secretory phase. Secrete nourishment in hope that embryo will come and I'll provide nourishment, right? So it is happening in uterus. This change is happening in uterus. So, corpus luteum maintained by LH. And you know what is corpus luteum? Degenerated Graafian follicle. So LH maintain corpus luteum. Corpus luteum, huge amount of progesterone. And this progesterone is important to maintain thickness of endometrium for pregnancy. So means this corpus luteum will remain if pregnancy, it will remain till 14th day. If there is no fertilization, it will degenerate, right? So it will degenerate after 13, 14 days. And this luteal phase is basically happening from 15 to 29, whatever days, 28 to 29. So this is for 14 days. Means total 14 days are fixed days for the luteal phase. So this is for fixed days. These other phases can be changed their days, but it is for fixed days. That is for 14 days and NEET question, right? So luteal phase is for fixed day. So now you just see this diagram, what is happening. So menstrual phase happening till 3 to 5 days of menstrual cycle. From this to 13, obviously follicular phase. On 14th, ovulation is happening. And after that to 29 days, luteal phase or secretory phase is happening, right? So now you just see FSH increase, LH will increase and act on the follicle to mature them. So primary convert into secondary, secondary into tertiary, tertiary into Graafian follicle or mature follicle. So it will secrete estrogen. Estrogen is at peak, as you can see. And this estrogen is regenerating the broken wall, as you can see. Now it is regenerating itself, right? So ovulation now, because of LH surge. So estrogen is at peak. Only on 13th day, it sent positive feedback for LH. And LH surge, FSH also go up. But because of LH surge, it will cause ovulation. Egg will come out, and this left out Graafian follicle convert into corpus luteum. This corpus luteum secrete huge amount of progesterone. So after ovulation, progesterone has peak, and this progesterone will maintain the thickness of endometrium, as you can see. And obviously it will release estrogen also. Estrogen also released, and this estrogen, so obviously this estrogen will also maintain the thickness of uterus, right? So progesterone, estrogen. So estrogen has two peak, one before ovulation, one after ovulation. So they will ask in the NEET that which hormone has two peaks in the whole menstrual cycle. Obviously estrogen has two peaks, right? Estrogen has two peaks, and estrogen help in maintain the help in the proliferation of the uterus. So progesterone, estrogen both will act on the uterus wall, as you can see. So it's known as luteal phase. Plus progesterone also act on uterus to form the glands for the nourishment secretion, right? So that is the purpose of this particular estrogen. So let's sum up this whole cycle in one line. So this menstrual first phase is the menstrual phase, in which progesterone, the root cause of this menstrual phase, is lower down the progesterone level, and obviously other hormone also less, estrogen also less, LH also less, FSH also less. So 1 to 5 days, right? And then 5 to 13 days or till 14 days, we are having LH high, FSH high, estrogen high. NEET question, that which hormone will high during the proliferative phase or during the follicular phase, right? Now 14th, now we will just see the 14th day ovulation, ovulatory phase. And we know that during ovulatory phase, what happened? It is for 14 days. Due to LH surge, ovulation happened. And after 14, 28 to 29 days, for 14 days, we are fixed luteal phase or secretion phase. Luteal phase or secretion phase, in which progesterone level is very, very up, estrogen level is still high, LH, FSH low. So they get lower down here. And this is how exactly happens. So when there is no fertilization, luteal phase degenerate, means corpus luteum will degenerate. And when corpus luteum degenerate, what will happen? Progesterone will not be released. So in absence of pregnancy, right? In absence of pregnancy, what will happen? In absence of pregnancy, corpus luteum will degenerate. Corpus luteum degenerate after some time. And obviously when it is degenerated, no progesterone. Progesterone will drop down. And because progesterone drop down, what will happen? Endometrium lining thickness will not be maintained. Endometrium will break down and menstrual cycle happen. Endometrial will break down, right? And obviously menstrual cycle will start. But when pregnancy happen, when pregnancy, suppose fertilization has happened, in that case, after 7 days of fertilization, means 14th, and after ovum has, after secondary oocyte has released from ovum, it has life for 24 hours. So it is viable for 24 hours. So if sperm come within 24 hours to fertilize it, then it will get fertilized. After that, it cannot fertilize it, right? So suppose 14-day ovulation happened and in 24 hours fertilization has already happened. In that case, fertilization, after 7 days of fertilization, you know what happened? Placenta, some part of some special cell of placenta are formed, which will secrete special hormone known as human chorionic gonadotrophin that we have done in regular class. So this HCG will maintain corpus luteum in pregnancy. So it will rescue corpus luteum in presence of pregnancy. In presence, positive means presence of pregnancy, right? In presence of pregnancy, HCG will rescue this corpus luteum. So we will see that how exactly it happens. So now fertilization happen. So fertilization will actually cause the cleavage of the egg that we can see, right? All these stages will form like morula, blastocyst and blastocyst implant in the uterus. What is it? Let's see. So fertilization will happen. Suppose now the egg and sperm has to fertilize. So sperm fertilization will start. Fertilization will start from the insemination. Insemination means semen will deposited in the female reproductive tract. Already told you. Capacitation. So what is capacitation? Capacitation means hyperactivity of the sperm in uterus. So it's a hyperactive activity of sperm. So sperm has to be hyperactive. Sperm in uterus, or you can say that it is the last maturation phase for sperm. So before it fertilize egg, it has to undergo maturation, last maturation for sperm, right? So last maturation process for this sperm is the capacitation. After that, acrosomal reaction means acrosin, or you can say sperm lysin. So sperm will migrate, will move with hyperactivity to the fallopian tube in the ampulla region. And obviously in the ampulla region of fallopian tube, fertilization happen. So first of all, I have shown you how secondary oocyte look like. So it has this sperm acrosome will release its enzyme to dissolve all the corona radiata, zona pellucida to take the entry in the egg. The sperm lysin will dissolve egg membrane, right? For fertilization to give the entry to the sperm in the cell, right? So that you have to remember. Cortical reaction means cortical granules inside the egg that I have told you will actually form the hard layer around the egg, right? So cortical reaction means the hardening of zona pellucida will happen to prevent polyspermy. Right? So this is the acrosomal reaction, and after this blockage of polyspermy happen because of the cortical reaction and obviously zona reaction. So what happened zona reaction? You know that zona pellucida will also be blocked. Hardening of the zona pellucida will happen and it form the fertilization membrane around it. So that hard membrane known as fertilization membrane around the zona pellucida, right? Form fertilization membrane around it to prevent polyspermy. Means many sperm cannot enter the egg now, so it will be blocked. So now egg will activated means sperm nucleus will be entered inside the egg, right? And this stage will come and finally meiosis. So egg activation means meiosis 2 will be completed. So finally, as the sperm touches the egg, meiosis 2 completed. And finally, this ovum has been formed and this is the nucleus of sperm. So these are known as pronuclei. Pronuclei means one nucleus of egg, other nucleus of sperm. So this stage will come before fertilization. And this is the zona pellucida layer. Syngamy means fusion of both nucleus will happen to form zygote, diploid zygote. So this zygote will be formed. This is how zygote look like. Right? This is how zygote look like. This is the zona pellucida layer. So now you can see after this division will happen, 2 cell stage formed, 2 divide into 4 cell, then 8 to 16 cell stage known as morula. And in morula, they are basically, morula have 8 to 16 cell stage and they are very, very small in, small in size because they doesn't undergo any, growth. So when we talk about cleavage, no, cleavage division means rapid mitotic division. It's not normal mitosis. It's the rapid mitosis, and there is no growth phase, means no cytoplasm will be added, right? So no growth phase means, what do you understand by no growth phase? No growth means no cytoplasm will be added. So it happens till the morula stage, right? So that no cytoplasm is being added. So no cytoplasm is added. And it's very fast. This is very fast mitotic, very short interphase. So they also have very short interphase, you know, the cell division, right? The short I phase means short interphase of cell division are there. So this make them different than the normal mitosis. So after morula, you know, it will just increase its cell size. It will, you know, in the morula at the 16 cell stage, by the time it reaches the 16 cell stage, it comes down in the uterus, right? So morula from fallopian tube comes to the uterus and finally convert into blastocyst. So how does blastocyst look like? This way. So, you know, cells are arranged in this way. So blastocyst has this zona pellucida intact around it. And now this outer cell, because it has come to uterus, and we know that in secretory phase of menstrual cycle, right? So this is luteal phase is happening this time, right? Because by the after 4 days of fertilization, it reaches the uterus, and uterus has a lot of nourishment during secretory phase. All the nourishment will enter the morula, and all the morula cell, which are very small in size. So when we see the cell of the morula have very small size cell, right? So known as blastomere. So blastomere are very small in size, very small in size. They are very small size. So means you won't imagine that the size of morula and zygote are very similar. They both are of same size, but difference, what is the difference between zygote and morula? Morula has 8 cell to 16 cell stage, and zygote has only one large cell. So earlier one cell having the same nourishment, so that's why it's so large. But now the same nourishment is distributed among the 8 to 16 cells. So each cell will be very small starved cell, right? So when, as soon as they reaches uterus, they started getting nourishment and they started eating a lot of food and they become so fatty cell. So cells are arranged themselves in periphery known as trophoblast, right? So trophoblast means they will form placenta later. It will form placenta later. So it will arrange itself in periphery and ICM, inner cell mass. So one type of cell will arranged in one corner, that is the inner cell mass. And this inner cell mass, also known as embryoblast, means this cell is responsible to produce whole embryo. So it will produce embryo. It will form whole embryo. This is something which you have to remember. This space is filled with nourishment, right? So, you know, this inner cell mass and this particular region, at this particular region where inner cell mass is attached, from this particular region, it will implanted in the uterus, as you can see. So this region where inner cell mass is there, this region is basically get embedded to the uterus, right? So this is known as animal pole. This is known as embryonic pole. So where inner cell mass is attached, that region, that end known as embryonic pole. So via this embryonic pole, it will undergo implanted with the uterus, right? And this is embryonical. Ebb means opposite to the embryonical pole. So embryonical pole, right? So this is the region from it with at which it will be implanted with the uterus. So now let me show you this. So blastocyst will undergo implantation with the uterus. We know very well. It will develop the placenta by the third semester, by the end of 3rd month. Whole placenta will be developed nicely. But these trophoblasts will start secreting HCG. So I have told you HCG will form placenta later, and it will start secreting HCG also. So HCG hormone, human chorionic gonadotrophin, will actually rescue the corpus luteum in fertilization, right? So now you just see implantation in uterus has already been done. Gastrulation means this is also the embryonic development stage in which 3 germ layers are formed. And these 3 germ layers are responsible, that is the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. These are responsible to produce the whole embryo. And whole embryogenesis will happen. They're all body parts made up of these three germ layer, and finally fetus development, and finally it will be ready for, fully developed fetus will be ready for delivery, right? It will be ready for delivery. And now let's see. Now let's see. Gestation period means for 9 months from the implantation to, means when the baby is fully developed to come out, it will take 9 months, right? So it is divided into 3 trimesters. So first trimester means 0 to 3 months. What happened at that time? Cell is dividing, cell is migrating in the embryo, differentiating, and it will form the formation of basic structure, rudimentary structures is formed, means a particular skeletal form is basically developed here, right? At this particular time, not the whole developed, not the fully developed, but rudimentary, right? In a rudimentary way, all the organs are developed. Neural tube formation will start for the first time, and this is the first structure that will start formation, that will start happening, that will start forming. And by the end of first month, heart of embryo is completely developed. So this is the first organ, heart is the first organ that is completely developed, right? So this is the neural tube is the first structure that will actually start developing, but the organ that has already fully developed by the end of first month is the heart. And first sign of growing fetus is heartbeat. So you can just feel the heartbeat after 1 month of pregnancy, right? So by the end of second month, their limbs, their digits are already formed, right? And all the organs are formed in not well developed way, in a very, very rudimentary way. And external genitalia are completely developed by the first trimester. Second trimester, 4 to 6 months, and during fifth month, first movement of fetus is seen. Hair on the head of the fetus will be seen. Eyelids separate, although they will not open their eyes, but they are separated, right? And eyelids are already formed by the end of second month, right? Sorry, second trimester. And soft body known as lanugo will cover their whole body. And in the third trimester, that is 6 to 9 months, their lanugo will shed off because they don't require hair now. That is our ancestral property, means earlier other primates used to have a huge hair, but we don't need it. So these are not required. So they will just started shedding off in the fetus only, and all the organs are fully developed and it's ready for delivery now. So what we have to do, we have to study the parturition, delivery. So this signal, once the baby is fully developed, these two structure, placenta and fully developed fetus, send signal to the hypothalamus part, and hypothalamus will trigger pituitary gland to secrete oxytocin. Oxytocin will act on the uterus and do little contraction initially, known as trigger fetal reflex, ejection reflex. So it will just give the signal to the female, some labor kind pain or some very pain with less frequency, right? So I mean that frequency, that fetal ejection reflex will start in 30 minutes one time it's contracting. So it is kind of signal that now parturition is about to happen, right? And it's a neuroendocrine mechanism, means it involves hormone as well as brain part. So fully developed fetus and placenta will act on maternal pituitary gland to release the oxytocin, and oxytocin will act on the uterus for contraction. And as it is contracting uterus, what will happen? It is pushing the baby, and baby head is continuously hitting this particular, what we called amnion, right? So amnion is the extra embryonic layer. It's kind of extra layer around the baby. It's continuously hitting the amnion. Amnion will rupture and whole water will go out. So whole amniotic fluid will go out, which cause the water breaking. And what will happen? That dilation phase stages basically happen. The second stage of the parturition is expulsion stage. Oxytocin continuously send positive feedback to contraction of uterus. And as uterus is contracting vigorously, it will send positive feedback to oxytocin to release more oxytocin. It will send positive feedback to hypothalamus to secrete more oxytocin. And more oxytocin will continuously act on uterus, and plus prostaglandin secreted by the placenta also act on the uterus wall, and uterus contraction will be vigorous. Until the baby doesn't come out, it will keep on increasing the frequency of contraction. Finally, baby is delivered, and after birth, placenta and umbilical cord which comes out have rich source of, it is the rich source of stem cell. So stem cell has ability to regenerate themselves, right? To regenerate whole organ. So the whole organs, whole organism. So stem cell banking is done with them. And lactation, finally baby has come out. Lactation means mother has to secrete the milk under the prolactin hormone, which is secreted by pituitary gland, anterior pituitary gland. So when child is crying or sucking mother breast, at that time, pituitary gland is stimulated to secrete this hormone, and mother started secreting it in the alveoli. And oxytocin will help in the milk ejection. You have to remember, it eject the milk in in the mouth of baby, right? So oxytocin will be released from posterior pituitary gland. So you must have done it in the 11th class, right? So first few days, milk is known as colostrum, or what we called golden milk. And if you see the composition of it, it is having IgA antibody, interferons. There is almost no fat, no they have rich protein, lactose, and calories also, right? So this is the composition of colostrum. That's why it is considered very, very nutritive for a newly born baby, right? So this is the question from NEET. The number of autosomes in human primary spermatocyte. So you have to write down the answer in the chat box. And other question for you, which of the following layer in the antral follicle is acellular? This is also NEET question. You have to write down answer in the chat box. So I hope you like this summary of this chapter. Have a great day, kids. See you all with the next chapter summary. Enjoy. I hope you like the session.